Happy that you got this short. Wasn't meant for you to be here tonight. Notwithstanding, wow. Good evening, everyone. Alright, so actually this is very impressive. I just want to see that. So I will build on aspects of the presentations that have gone before me, and so I want to identify those particular segments of the presentations that have gone before me, so that you can understand or it can accentuate the position that I am going to present from. The first is a noteworthy point made by Richard Isavo, which deals with greed. I just want you to bear that in mind within the context of the topic. The second is that by Dr. Boyle on access to finance. Now, I won't do the Chamber of Commerce any justice by saying, imagine that was 1995. This is almost 2025 and nothing has changed. Many of our young people are still being turned away because they don't have security or they don't have collateral at the financial institutions. And so, I just want to call on this to be transformed, and at some point in the near future for all of this to change, more risk-taking and much more innovation within the financial sector. But perseverance, that Dr. Boyle would have mentioned, is very important. And the topic that I'll present on leveraging benefits and managing the risks of consortiums. I think when you look at perseverance, and when you look at what Matthew Gold has been able to do here tonight, I think that he deserves a special round. He absolutely does. And just as an interjection, has anyone noticed Andrew's face when Matthew is making these jokes? She's like, what is he doing to see? So hilarious. Alright, so the structure of what I will speak about this evening is divided into three main parts. Firstly, I will speak about why is a consortium important. That's the first thing, and I will examine it in a very succinct fashion from, firstly, the macroeconomic lens of where we are in the juncture of Guyana's development. And then secondly, I will view it in a very, very high-level fashion from a theoretical standpoint. So that's the first part of it. Secondly, I look at the benefits of consortiums. And then thirdly, I look at the risks of consortiums and how we can essentially manage those risks. After all, that's the topic that I've been given, and I want to do this today. So I don't think I can do so in a complete sense, given the time constraint, Matthew. So the first aspect of it is that we exist in a free market society, and one that is competitive in nature. And so any individual who is sitting and seeking a handout and looking for something to just drop in their lap, they're mortally wrong, and they're certainly operating within the incorrect environment. And so I would advise you from the outset to adjust your perspective and to understand that we are living in a competitive market. We're living in an environment where competition is extraordinarily important for garnering the optimal outcome. But with that being said, various aspects of the Guyanese economy is undergoing specific change that is causing some fundamental shifts in how we know, see, understand, and really analyze business. The first is the internationalization of Guyana and the Guyanese private sector. Perhaps when Dr. Boyle would have started business, he would have catered a strategy for just about 700, 800,000 people in Guyana. But now we have the internationalization of the Guyanese private sector and of Guyana. The international community is no longer when you move out of the geographical borders of Guyana, but it is now when you step out of your door. And I want you to really bear that in mind, because how you channel your energies, how you are able to make yourself appear on a daily basis, and every single opportunity that you get to sell yourself, sell your business, sell your skill sets, etc., all of those opportunities become extraordinarily
important. And so what this has done is that it has opened the doors to scale and international competition. Now, because we have had firms in Guyana coming from a disposition of supplying only the Guyanese market and only catering for our internal market, you'll find that the old model of solely depending on yourself and competition and being competitive in that nature, that old model has to be somewhat adjusted to cater for the new prevailing realities. And what does that mean? Well, this essentially means that as an individual, you may not be in a position to actually leverage on all of the opportunities. And this is where cooperation and a cooperative equilibrium, as we like to say in economics, that is where that comes into play. And just for the students of mine in the room, all dozens of you, and for the economically and theoretically oriented, Augustine Cournot in 1838, along with John Forbes Nash, how many of you have seen A Beautiful Mind? You haven't? Watch A Beautiful Mind, John Forbes Nash with Nash Equilibrium. Essentially, they come up with this concept that perhaps competition does not give you the most optimal outcome. And they bring several instances of reality and real-life situation. Nash actually won a Nobel Prize in economics for this in 1994. It gives you a very good real-life example as to where areas of cooperation can be applied to ensure that a more optimal outcome over the long run can ensue. You take a couple of examples. Firstly, all of us interact with the traffic light on a daily basis. Each of us, when we are at the traffic light, we take the opportunity to adhere to the traffic light, or I would hope we take the opportunity to adhere to the traffic light. Certainly to taxi drivers, minibus drivers, please.
But if you
think about it, what makes a traffic light successful?
It's the
construct of every person who reaches to a traffic light cooperating with the rules of the game to ensure that we can all be able to have a free flow of traffic.
Right? Once
it's calibrated properly, of course.
But if you
think about an individual who intends to beat the traffic light in one particular instance, that person may win in the short term. That is, they may win now.
But consider if that individual is to do multiple iterations of the same thing
and beat the traffic light every time they reach to the traffic light.
What do you think
will be the outcome? Eventually, they will be in a position
that they
will be
in the
negative.
The same thing
occurs. We call it in economics the prisoner's dilemma.
If you have
prisoners and they decide to defect, if they're caught and they decide to defect on the strategy to cooperate amongst themselves and not sell out their fellow potential inmate, then the cooperative outcome is that both of them can perhaps serve 1 year or 2 years, as opposed to if they were to snitch on each other.
Then
you would find a situation where they can actually cause each other to go into the pen for a longer period of time.
I say all
of that to say that when you have multiple iterations of the same type of interaction, you will find that cooperation is actually the best outcome. And if you think about business, what do you want to be in business for? Do you want to be in business for the one shot? Do you want to be remembered in business as a scamp? Do you want to be remembered in business as someone who is a con man and who, takes every opportunity to just siphon off money? No. And so when we deal with, as we say in economics, games of multiple iteration, cooperation is critical for the long-term future. Now, with that being said, I've heard His Excellency speak on multiple occasions about why it is absolutely necessary for Guyanese enterprises to form themselves into consortiums. And I don't think that we've really had a full discussion of this nature with so many people here on why it is that it's important. I mean, we know that's important, but what are some of the apparent benefits of entering into a consortium? The first is that each and every one of us has our own degree of specialization that we bring. Now, we are going to be doing a barbecue at the Chamber of Commerce on July 3rd. But Clinton Erlin, being the ever masterful businessman that he is, brought his degree of specialization in soup making and threw out in our WhatsApp group, hey guys, I want to put some soup there. And so what will that do? That's going to necessarily add to the value that an individual will obtain when they go to our annual barbecue for CARICOM, that mixer that we have. Why? Because now we are cooperating with Clinton Erlin to not only have barbecue, but a wider variety that includes his famous soup. And so increased specializations, when we take it within an enterprising sense, you may not know everything. You may not have the vantage point within or from which you can observe every aspect of your enterprise. You may not be able to be or have the greatest dexterity in finance or accounting, etc. And so the benefit of cooperation as a result of increased specializations and increased skill set in the enterprise is apparent. The other aspect of the benefit is that of increased capital. Now, you may not as an individual be able to make what you want happen with your degree of savings. You may not be even able to make it attempting to approach a commercial bank for a loan. And so a consortium will allow you to be able to leverage not only on your individual capital, but also capital that others may bring to the table. So that's the second aspect. The third aspect is something which is extraordinarily important, and Matthew Gall would have alluded to it earlier. Remember, your network determines your net worth. And so a singular individual who may have a particular network that they can leverage on obviously will not have as much network as 2 persons, 3 persons, 4 persons. And so whilst you may say, okay, I can reach 50 people, 100 people when I post on my social media. If you do what Matthew Gall has done and blast the social media with economy, sponsor it, get everyone participating to put it out there, increased cooperation has actually resulted in this that you see here this evening. And so leveraging that network is extremely important and an underestimated aspect of engaging in a consortium. The fourth aspect, which does have an obverse, and we'll get to that eventually, is that when you have multiple persons participating in a particular activity with the same object, with the same objective, you will find that better and more innovative ways can actually arise. It's something that we call a dialectical process, where the interactions of individuals tossing up new ideas will necessitate a better outcome than just a singular individual. But of course, that inherently too has its downsides, and I'll get into some of the risks now in terms of managing consortiums. So, what are some of the risks? In the first instance, there is always, remember the traffic light example, remember what I would have said about a cooperative equilibrium, there is always an incentive for an individual to cheat on the process of cooperation. So that is the first aspect of it. And this is why reputation, understanding who you are entering into business with is extraordinarily important. And that is why it cannot in no way be understated. And so when it was mentioned earlier, it proves to be one of the most poignant points. What would you want to do? You would also want to ensure that you cover your partnership with a joint venture agreement or something that is contractual in nature and can be applied in a court of law or in arbitration or mediation. Why? Because as an individual too, you want to protect what it is that you have. Now, the dialectical process, this is the second aspect of the risk. The dialectical process that I would have mentioned earlier also can necessarily toss up disagreements. And in that, you can actually have a collapse of the entire entity or the collapse of the entire enterprising structure. And once again, this is why it bears of no small merit to cover your partnership in law, to ensure that it is well captured and that you consult with an attorney and that you consult with someone who understands the corporate environment and what is ensuing in Guyana at this juncture, so that you are able to cover it in this joint ventureship agreement or a partnership agreement. But this brings me to the third risk of a consortium. And that in itself is an improperly drafted joint venture or partnership. And so we may want to be hasty to capture as many of the opportunities as we potentially can. But in reality, you ought to take the time to ensure that you are structuring your relation between yourself and your partner or amongst your partners in a fashion and in a form that caters for the realities of a rapidly expanding economy. So that's the fourth aspect of it. And then fifthly, one of the main risks of entering into a consortium is that of reputational risk. Now, we are all individuals and we can control what we do. I know that if I go outside, I'm going to have tea. Right, Matthew? But I can't tell you if my business partner is going to go and drink barefoot wines and embarrass not just myself, but also the entity, perhaps give out some of our trade secrets, amongst many other things. And so increased reputational risk is something that comes along with entering into partnerships, consortiums, and more generally any sort of arrangement that does not include solely yourself. Notwithstanding these risks, I think that you would clearly see that once you have a strong structural underpinning in the form of a joint venture agreement that is properly crafted, and you are able to construct your consortium in a fashion that is airtight legally, then certainly the benefits of entering into a consortium far and leaps and bounds outweigh the risks. So I won't stand much longer between yourself and the intermission that Matthew has so kindly promised you. But I only want to, before I exit the stage, make one announcement, if I am so permitted to do at your event. I would like to announce that from now until Wednesday, midday, the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce and Industry will give anyone who comes from this event and applies for membership, free membership until March 2024. And this is in no small part in our effort to continue to support Guyana's thriving entrepreneur class. Remember, I came across a fantastic phrase in the legal profession. It says, ex nihilo nihil fit. Out of nothing comes nothing. And so if you want to ensure that you push as much as you can, prepare yourself for the new economy, then ensure that day by day, bit by bit, you continue to ready yourself and be in a position to capitalize and utilize all of the opportunities as they may present themselves to you. Thank you very much.